I never believed in curses or haunted objects, never in the stories that people whispered about items possessing some cruel will of their own, but that disbelief evaporated the moment I laid eyes on the shoes. They were displayed in a dusty corner of a little thrift shop, tucked between old coats and fraying scarves, an innocent-looking pair of black ballet flats with thin satin ribbons and a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer in the dim light. The woman behind the counter gave me a strange look when I picked them up, a look that made my skin crawl but also sparked a strange curiosity. She said nothing. She simply watched, and when I handed her a few crumpled bills, her eyes lingered on mine for a fraction too long before returning to her ledger. That night, I brought them home, not because I needed them, but because something in their quiet allure called to me in a way I could not resist or explain. I should have stopped the moment I slipped my feet inside. The instant the soft satin embraced my skin, a strange tightening sensation ran up my legs, like invisible fingers curling and pulling, urging me forward. I froze, heart pounding, thinking it was just the excitement of a new purchase, but then I heard it, faint at first, a whispering murmur that seemed to come from the floor itself, a voice almost coaxing, almost laughing. I told myself it was my imagination, that the shoes were new and tight, that I was simply feeling awkward in unfamiliar footwear, but the compulsion began the next morning. I woke to find myself standing in the living room, shoes on, staring out the window, as if they had brought me there. My hands felt oddly heavy, my muscles reluctant to obey my commands. The shoes had taken control, and I had no power to stop them. The first time they walked me to the boutique, I resisted. I told myself I would not go, that I was not a man who wandered into women's stores without reason, but by the time I realized I was moving, I was already on the street. My legs carried me with uncanny precision, turning corners I had never walked before, leading me to a boutique I had never noticed, its sign ornate and almost glowing in the muted morning light. Inside, the air smelled of perfume and polished wood, and I felt my pulse spike as the shoes guided me past racks of silk blouses and dresses I could never imagine myself wearing. The saleswoman smiled, a thin, knowing smile, and I could feel her eyes on my feet. I felt exposed and ashamed, but every attempt to turn back was met with the unrelenting tug of the shoes, pulling me deeper into the shop as if I were a puppet. Days passed, or perhaps weeks. Time became fluid, measured not by clocks but by the moments the shoes compelled me to leave my apartment. They began to whisper more clearly, a soft, sibilant voice that promised indulgence, escape, a new identity. At first, I resisted, fighting the pull with every ounce of will I had, but resistance only seemed to increase the intensity. My body began to betray me. I noticed the subtle changes in how I walked, the slight curve in my posture, the way the muscles in my legs adapted to the shoes' demands. The ribbons seemed to tighten themselves, coiling around my ankles with almost sentient precision, and I felt myself softening, my movements becoming lighter, more delicate. I hated it. I hated every second, yet a perverse fascination gripped me, a mix of terror and secret thrill I could not name. The boutiques became more than stores. They became sanctuaries, stages, arenas where I was both observed and invisible. I would drift through aisles of chiffon and lace, feeling the gaze of mannequins and human eyes alike, sometimes imagining that the shoes themselves were testing me, gauging my reactions, refining their control. One day, I noticed the way my hands lingered over a silky blouse, the way my reflection in the mirror seemed unfamiliar, softer, almost feminine. My chest rose and fell differently. My shoulders seemed narrower, and yet I panicked, trying to convince myself it was mere posture, illusion, trick of light. But when I left the boutique, the subtle shifts remained, as if the shoes had rewritten something in me. I began to dream of the shoes. In my dreams, they moved without me, walking through streets I had never visited, past shops I had never seen. I would try to remove them, but they slipped from my hands, danced across the floor, and returned to my feet as if they were alive, laughing at my helplessness. My waking hours blurred into these dreams. I could no longer distinguish between compulsion and choice, between my own desires and the insistent whispers that came from the satin. I avoided friends, avoided family, speaking little of my days. My life shrank to the rhythm of the shoe's command: leave apartment, follow streets, enter boutique, linger, exit, repeat. One evening, I stumbled into a shop I had never been drawn to before. It was smaller, dimmer, almost hidden between two larger stores, and yet the shoes insisted. Inside, the air was warm and scented with vanilla, the light soft, highlighting dresses of every hue. The saleswoman greeted me with a smile that was too knowing, too sharp. She walked past me, hand trailing along a rack, and I felt a shiver. The shoes pulled me forward, and I obeyed, every instinct screaming that I should run, that I should tear them off and flee. But the shoes had become extensions of my will, my body's new masters. I found myself lifting a delicate skirt, brushing fingers over fabric that felt alien and intoxicating at the same time. I tried to stop, tried to resist, but a thrill mingled with fear surged through me, a dark pleasure at the sensation of being drawn into something I could never have imagined. The changes became undeniable. My voice softened, almost involuntarily. My features seemed to shift in the mirror's reflection, cheekbones sharper, lips fuller, eyes wider. I recoiled at first, horrified, but then a strange acceptance began to creep in, a reluctant fascination. I would leave boutiques with small purchases, trying to rationalize them, saying I needed gifts, that I was indulging a whim. The shoes never judged. They simply whispered, guiding, pulling, shaping. My wardrobe slowly shifted to match their insistence. Delicate fabrics, skirts, blouses, shoes of every kind. I hated it, and yet a small, shameful part of me loved it. People began to notice. Friends would comment on my appearance, asking questions I could not answer. I lied, made excuses, blamed impulses, claiming I was experimenting with style, exploring new identities. And yet, inside, I knew the truth. The shoes had taken more than my feet. They had taken my autonomy, reshaping my body, my habits, my mind. I was trapped in a cycle I could not break, each step deeper into boutiques reinforcing the changes. The whispers had evolved into demands, instructions laced with seduction, guiding my hands to fabrics, my eyes to mirrors, my body to forms I could no longer resist. I began to write in secret, pouring my fear, my fascination, my despair into journals I hid beneath floorboards. I recorded every moment the shoes compelled me to leave, every subtle shift in my posture, my gait, my mind. It was my confession, my attempt to reclaim the fragments of self I could still name. But even writing could not halt them. One morning, I awoke to find them gone, vanished from where I left them. Panic surged, and I searched the apartment frantically. Hours later, they appeared at my feet again, as if mocking my efforts. And I knew there was no escape. The shoes were patient. They would wait. They would guide. They would continue shaping me until the man I once was no longer existed, replaced entirely by the form the shoes demanded. I cannot tell you how long it has been. Weeks, months, perhaps years. Time feels meaningless. I am a stranger to myself now, both terrified and fascinated by the reflection in the mirror. The shoes lie beside my bed at night, innocuous, silent, but I know their intentions. I feel the pull even as I write this, my fingers trembling, my pulse quickening. Tomorrow I will wake, slip them on, and walk once more into boutiques, past racks of silk and lace, into spaces that are no longer foreign but inevitable. The whispers will guide me. The pull will be irresistible. I will obey, and I will change further. I will never be free. And I confess all of this because perhaps someone someday should know that objects can hold more power than we imagine, that compulsion can wear the guise of choice, and that sometimes the smallest, most innocent-looking things, like a pair of black ballet flats, can rewrite your life entirely. The next morning, I awoke with the faintest trace of dread and excitement coiling in my chest. The shoes were there, precisely where I had left them, ribbons untangled yet gleaming faintly in the early light, as though mocking me. I tried to push them aside, to deny their pull, but my legs moved before my mind could catch up. My feet slid into them almost involuntarily, satin warming against my skin. The whisper came at once, soft but insistent, weaving around my thoughts like smoke through the cracks of a window frame. It was not a voice in the air, not a sound I could locate. It was inside my head, threading itself between my neurons, making my mind pliable. Walk. I found myself on the street again, walking with a gait I barely recognized, each step lighter, more careful, my toes curling instinctively into the delicate shape of the flats. The city blurred around me. People passed by, indifferent, and I felt both invisible and exposed, as if the shoes had made me see through myself and yet forced me to reveal every secret of my posture, my movement. The boutique appeared like a shadow, its window glowing faintly as if anticipating my arrival. I hesitated, not with my feet, which betrayed me, but with my mind. The door creaked as I entered, and the air shifted, warm and fragrant. Inside, the space seemed to have expanded. Racks of dresses stretched in impossible rows, fabrics glinting under soft lighting, colors I had no name for shimmering like wet silk. The saleswoman appeared again, the same knowing smile on her face, and this time she spoke. Her voice was low, melodic, almost hypnotic. "We've been expecting you," she said, and I shivered, unsure whether it was menace or welcome. My hands moved to a rack without thought, brushing over dresses as though they had always belonged there, as though I had always been meant to touch and admire them. My reflection in a tall mirror caught me off guard. My shoulders were narrower, my chest subtly altered, my face softer. I had noticed changes before, incremental, almost imperceptible, but this time it was undeniable. I did not know who I was seeing, only that the shoes had drawn a version of me I did not recognize, and yet there was a strange comfort in it. Hours passed, though the clock never seemed to move. I lingered, trying and discarding garments, the shoes leading me to items I would never have chosen. Each dress I touched, each skirt I lifted, felt like a confession, a submission. I hated it. I hated the compulsion. And yet there was pleasure in the act, a dark, suffocating thrill that gnawed at my self-loathing. I tried to leave, but the shoes resisted, guiding me deeper into the boutique, toward an alcove filled with delicate heels, ribbons, and stockings. I wanted to tear them off, to destroy the shoes, to reclaim myself, but my fingers obeyed their commands. I held a pair of soft pink pumps, feeling their weight, imagining how they would alter my posture, the tilt of my legs. The whisper was insistent, seductive. "They are yours and you are theirs." By the time I exited the boutique, the sky was gray, and a chill ran along my spine. My reflection in the shop window caught my eye again. My hair fell differently now, softer, framing my face in a way I could not have managed deliberately. My hips swayed slightly, naturally, involuntarily, and I realized I was smiling despite the terror that gripped me. The shoes had taken me further than before, and yet a tiny, ashamed part of me wanted to see where they would lead next. I walked back through the city streets, each step rehearsed, automatic, guided by the invisible tether between my mind and the satin flats. Days became routines, blurred cycles of waking, dressing, walking, shopping, returning. I began to notice subtle details in the boutiques, the way mannequins were posed as if to watch me, the saleswomen whose glances lingered a fraction too long, the whisper of fabric brushing against itself like a secret conversation. Each visit, each compelled movement, reshaped me further. My voice softened, my mannerisms shifted, my gestures became fluid, delicate, practiced. I caught glimpses of myself in reflective surfaces, a stranger wearing my face, my body, my eyes, and I shivered, terrified and fascinated. One night, I tried to sleep without the shoes. I left them by the door, convincing myself that tomorrow I would refuse, that I would reclaim control. But when I awoke, they were beside my bed, ribbons untangled, satin gleaming faintly. I tried to resist, tried to ignore the pull, but the compulsion surged stronger than ever, and I found myself moving toward the door, feet leading me into the streets, guided by a force I could neither fight nor understand. The boutiques appeared like magnets, glowing windows in the night, and the whisper grew louder, insistent, intoxicating. You belong here. This is what you are meant to be. I could not explain it, could not rationalize the transformations that followed. My wardrobe shifted entirely, my habits, my gait, my very thoughts bent to the influence of the shoes. I bought lingerie, delicate blouses, skirts that swayed with every step. I perfected my posture, my expression, my voice. I was becoming the person the shoes demanded, and though I fought, there was a creeping acceptance, a dark, shameful pride in the act. Each visit to a boutique, each compelled purchase, cemented the changes, and I could not stop, could not look away. Friends began to notice. Casual comments, jokes, questions I could not answer. I lied, deflected, hid my journals, my secret reflections, the truth of the shoes that had seized me. I walked into rooms and felt the familiar tug, guiding me to racks of clothing, to mirrors, to forms that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. The shoes were patient, relentless, their whispers constant. I realized that my life had become entirely theirs, the boundaries between compulsion and desire dissolved. I was trapped, reshaped, a creature of satin and subtle manipulation, and yet a tiny part of me reveled in it, craving the next pull, the next change. One evening, I found a boutique unlike any before. Hidden in a narrow alley, small, almost claustrophobic, yet filled with the soft scent of roses and polished wood. The shoes led me in, and I felt their anticipation, their power. The saleswoman approached, voice smooth, melodic, a predator in silk. She touched my arm lightly, and I flinched, yet did not move. The shoes compelled me to follow, to explore, to submit to the choices made for me. Mirrors surrounded the room, reflecting versions of myself I barely recognized, each more feminine, more delicate, more shaped by the shoe's will. My hands moved to garments, touching textures, imagining the changes they would impose on my body, my posture, my very mind. I left that night, purchases in hand, heart pounding, body trembling. The reflection in a darkened window caught me as I walked, revealing changes I could no longer deny. My face had softened further, my chest subtly altered, my hips shifting imperceptibly with each step. I hated it, yet the shoes hummed their approval, satisfied with their work. I realized then that my identity was no longer mine to command. I had become an extension of the shoes' desire, a vessel reshaped, mind and body molded to their will, walking endlessly into boutiques, into mirrors, into a life I had not chosen but could no longer resist. Weeks turned into months, though I could not be certain of the passage of time. Each day bled into the next, measured only by the pull of the shoes and the compulsive rhythm of boutiques. I stopped resisting. Any attempt to do so was exhausting, futile, and the moment I surrendered, the whispers grew stronger, more intimate. They no longer guided me merely to stores. They guided me to specific racks, to precise items, to mirrors positioned to show the reflection they wanted me to see. I caught myself tracing my fingers over lace and silk, imagining the way my body would look, how my hands would move, how my gait would change. Fear and exhilaration became inseparable, a constant heartbeat in my chest. One rainy evening, I followed the shoes to a new boutique tucked behind an alley that seemed to twist impossibly. The sign was barely visible, a faint script glowing under the dim streetlight. Inside, the boutique was warmer than the damp night air outside, lined with mirrors that seemed to shimmer with a life of their own. The air smelled faintly of roses and vanilla, intoxicating, clinging to my skin and to the shoe's influence. The saleswoman appeared, her smile both welcoming and predatory, eyes tracing my every movement as if she could see not just me, but the changes the shoes had already wrought. I felt the pull of the satin flats urging me forward, guiding my gaze to a display of delicate stockings. My knees buckled slightly as I knelt to touch them, my reflection showing a form I barely recognized. I realized then that the shoes had not only reshaped my body, they were reshaping my perception of myself. I was learning to move differently, speak differently, think differently. My thoughts were no longer entirely my own. They were filtered through the whispers that threaded through my mind, soft coaxing that promised indulgence, perfection, inevitability. I felt shame, yes, but also a strange thrill, a dark pleasure in surrendering, in allowing the shoes to dictate every small motion, every gesture. I bought the stockings, the heels, a delicate blouse, my hands trembling as if I were confessing secrets with every touch. At home, the changes continued. My body responded differently to clothing, the fabric sliding over skin in ways that felt both alien and natural. My posture became fluid, graceful, each movement carefully guided by a subconscious understanding of the shoe's will. I looked in the mirror and saw someone else entirely. The man I had been was fading, replaced by a softer, more delicate reflection, eyes wider, shoulders narrower, hips subtly curved. The realization terrified me, yet I could not stop. The whispering had become a constant hum, a presence I could not ignore, a companion and a captor. I began to dream vividly. In these dreams, the shoes walked themselves, carrying me through streets I had never visited, into boutiques that shimmered with impossible light. I would try to remove them, to run, to reclaim control, but they moved faster, always a step ahead, leading me deeper into a life I could no longer deny. The dreams left me waking in a cold sweat, yet a part of me longed for them, craved the guidance, the compulsion, the transformation. Each dream, each compelled step in waking life, reshaped me further. My voice softened even in sleep, my gestures became delicate, almost instinctively feminine, and the reflection I glimpsed in the window each morning frightened me more than any nightmare. Friends noticed the changes. Casual remarks, laughter tinged with curiosity, questions I could not answer. I lied, deflected, crafted explanations I barely believed. But the shoes did not care. They had already taken more than my feet. They had taken my autonomy, my identity, the very sense of who I was. I walked into boutiques with increasing precision, selecting items I had never imagined wearing, trying them on with a sense of inevitability. The mirrors became both torment and temptation, showing me the gradual, irreversible changes, the version of myself the shoes were creating. I hated it. I feared it. I craved it. One evening, I followed the shoes to a boutique unlike any before. It was narrow, almost suffocating, lined with mirrors that reflected endlessly, giving the illusion of infinite space. The saleswoman greeted me with a knowing smile, and I felt my stomach knot. The shoes guided me to the center of the room, where a single dress hung, illuminated by a soft spotlight. Satin, lace, the color of twilight. I reached for it, hands trembling, and the whisper inside my head coiled around my thoughts. Wear it. It is yours. You are hers now. I hesitated, for a brief moment, a spark of resistance, but the shoes tightened around my feet, urging, compelling, forcing my body to obey. I slipped into the dress, and as the fabric hugged my changing form, I felt a jolt of recognition and loss. The man I had been was gone, replaced by someone shaped entirely by the shoe's will, by the rituals of boutiques, by the constant compulsion and submission. And yet, there was a dark satisfaction, a thrill I could not name, as though I had become exactly what the shoes had always intended. I left the boutique that night, purchases in hand, body and mind reshaped, reflection in every window confirming the changes I could no longer deny. My gait was fluid, delicate, my voice soft, melodic. My thoughts carried traces of the whispers, guiding me, comforting me, binding me further. I realized, with a mix of terror and exhilaration, that there was no escape. The shoes had claimed me entirely. They were patient, relentless, and I was theirs. I walked on, into the night, into boutiques, into mirrors, into the life that was no longer mine to choose, surrendering completely to the pull that had begun the day I first slipped into those black satin flats. Days melted into a rhythm I could not escape. Each morning, the shoes waited patiently by the door, satin gleaming faintly in the soft light. I no longer tried to resist. Even attempts at rebellion were pointless. The moment my feet touched the soft fabric, a shiver of anticipation ran up my legs, and I obeyed. The pull guided me through streets I once knew but now seemed strange, warped by the compulsion. Each boutique appeared almost like a lure, its windows glowing with invitation, the air scented with perfume and polished wood, each interior warmer, more intimate than the last. Mirrors multiplied endlessly, reflecting not only my body, but the subtle changes imposed by the shoes. I noticed the way I moved differently now, almost instinctively. My stride had become light, deliberate, each step controlled, delicate. My shoulders narrowed, my hips swayed, my chest rose and fell differently. The reflection staring back at me was softer, almost feminine, and yet I recoiled in panic even as a twisted part of me marveled. The whispering had intensified, guiding my gestures, nudging my gaze to certain racks, certain textures, certain mirrors. It was insistent, seductive, omnipresent. "You belong here," it hummed. "You are ours." In one boutique, I lingered before a display of heels and stockings. The saleswoman approached, voice low, melodic, eyes tracing me in a way that made my stomach knot. "They suit you," she said, and I felt the weight of her gaze as though she could see every tremor of fear, every quiver of fascination. My hands moved almost of their own accord, lifting a pair of satin heels, tracing the arch, imagining the subtle curve they would impose on my foot, the shift in posture, the sway of my hips. The thrill was unbearable, mingled with terror. I bought them, of course, my fingers trembling as if confessing a secret I could not voice aloud. Back home, I tried to rationalize. This was madness. I was a man, a human being, losing himself to a pair of shoes. Yet the more I tried to think, the stronger the pull, the deeper the subtle shifts in my body, posture, and thought. My reflection betrayed me constantly. The man I had been was fading. Cheekbones sharper, lips fuller, hips curved, shoulders narrowed. Every glance, every mirror, every shop window revealed the same transformation. I hated it, yet I could not stop. The shoes whispered continuously, coaxing me, guiding me, reshaping me into something entirely new, entirely theirs. I began to dream vividly, almost nightly. In these dreams, the shoes moved themselves, carrying me through streets and boutiques I had never seen, into impossible spaces where mirrors reflected not one but multiple versions of myself, each softer, more delicate, more compliant. I would try to remove the shoes, to run, to reclaim control, but they moved faster, anticipating my every thought, pulling me deeper into their ritual, into the transformation I could no longer resist. I would wake drenched in sweat, body trembling, yet a dark satisfaction lingered, an almost perverse craving for the pull, the compulsion, the change. My social life began to dissolve. Friends noticed, of course, asking questions, making comments I could no longer answer. I lied, deflected, avoided gatherings. My life contracted to the cycle of waking, dressing, slipping into the shoes, walking, shopping, returning, each day a repetition, a ritual I could not escape. Each boutique encounter reshaped me further. My posture, my gait, my gestures, my very thoughts shifted subtly with each compelled step. I was no longer fully myself. The shoes had rewritten me piece by piece, guiding my reflection, my movements, my desires. One night, I followed the shoes to a boutique hidden down an alley too narrow to be noticed, illuminated by a faint golden glow. Inside, the mirrors multiplied endlessly, creating an infinite space of reflection. The saleswoman approached, her voice soft, melodic, hypnotic. "We've been expecting you," she said. The shoes urged me forward, and I obeyed. They led me to a display of dresses, delicate, flowing fabrics that seemed almost alive under the soft light. My hands trembled as I brushed against silk and lace, and in the mirrors, I saw my reflection once again, altered further. My frame was slender, shoulders narrow, hips subtly curved. My expression was softer, my eyes wider, lips fuller. I recoiled, yet the pull of the shoes made me reach, touch, explore. I realized in that moment that my resistance was futile. The man I had been no longer existed, at least not fully. The shoes had claimed my autonomy, reshaped my body, rewritten my habits, my movements, my gestures. And yet, a strange exhilaration ran through me, dark and guilty, as if surrendering completely was a forbidden pleasure. I purchased the garments, my hands shaking, and left the boutique, body and mind reshaped, heart racing, whispers constant in my mind, guiding me, coaxing me, binding me further. The streets felt different at night. Reflections in darkened windows caught my eye at every turn, revealing the continuing transformation, each glance more undeniable than the last. The shoes hummed softly, an invisible presence in every step. I could feel them anticipating every thought, every desire, every hesitation. I was theirs completely, in ways I had never imagined, and yet a perverse part of me craved it, longed for the next pull, the next boutique, the next step into a life that was no longer mine. I cannot stop. I do not try anymore. Each morning, the shoes wait. Each step, each boutique, each reflection confirms what I have become. The man I was has been erased, replaced by someone guided, shaped, dominated by the pull of satin, by the whispers, by the inevitability of the transformation. I walk endlessly, compelled, consumed, reshaped. And though I am terrified, and though I mourn what I have lost, a shadowed thrill persists, a dark fascination with the process, the ritual, the complete surrender. The shoes have me entirely. They always will. The weeks that followed blurred into a rhythm I no longer recognized as life. Days and nights lost meaning. The pull of the shoes became the only constant. I no longer questioned their will. Even as I walked, my thoughts fractured, tangled with the whispers that coiled inside my skull like smoke. "You belong here," they murmured. "You are ours." My feet obeyed before my mind could even protest, carrying me down streets, into boutiques, past mirrors that reflected versions of myself I barely recognized. My reflection was no longer a man. It was softer, narrower, more delicate, a shape the shoes had been molding me toward all along. I hated it, and yet a dark, shameful part of me thrilled at every change, every compulsion, every mirrored confirmation of their control. I began to notice how others reacted. Saleswomen stared a fraction too long, smiles knowing, almost approving, as if they could see not only the changes in my body, but the submission in my mind. Strangers glanced with curiosity, and some with subtle admiration. I realized I was becoming something entirely new, neither fully male nor entirely human in my own perception, reshaped by invisible hands, by satin ribbons, by whispers only I could hear. My wardrobe shifted completely: skirts, blouses, stockings, delicate heels, all chosen by the unseen guidance of the shoes. My body had changed too. My hips curved, chest softened, shoulders narrowed, my gait fluid and deliberate. Mirrors no longer showed a reflection I could call my own. Dreams began to invade my waking hours. In them, the shoes walked me through impossible boutiques, stretching endlessly, walls lined with mirrors that reflected my transformation in infinite repetition. I would try to remove the shoes in these dreams, but they moved faster, slipping over my feet, tying themselves with invisible hands, guiding me forward, into ever more elaborate displays of silk, lace, and satin. In the dream world boutiques, the saleswomen spoke to me in voices that echoed the whispers of the shoes. "Yes, you belong here. Yes, you are ours. Yes, this is who you were always meant to be." I woke drenched in sweat, pulse racing, body trembling, yet a strange thrill lingered, an addictive pull to repeat the ritual, to obey, to surrender. Boutiques became stages. I no longer entered merely to shop. I entered to perform the transformation, to witness my own reshaping. Each visit was a ritual. The shoes guided my hands to specific garments, nudged me towards certain mirrors, altered my posture, my gestures, my expression. My body had become an instrument of obedience, a puppet of satin and whispers. Each glance in the glass reflected a stranger, soft, delicate, feminine, reshaped entirely. I recoiled, horrified, yet could not resist the pull. It was complete domination, yet mingled with dark fascination, a guilty thrill at the loss of control. Even at home, I could not escape. The shoes rested by the door, gleaming faintly, waiting. I tried to hide them, to lock them away, but they always returned, ribbons untangled, satin smooth, whispering in the silence. Walk. Shop. Transform. Obey. My body moved before I could decide. My thoughts bent to their will. My gestures, posture, voice, even expressions changed subtly, almost imperceptibly, until I no longer recognized the person I had been. I was a vessel, a construct shaped by unseen commands, and the pull of the shoes had become my reality. One night, I found myself in a boutique that seemed almost unreal. Narrow, suffocating, walls of mirrors reflecting endless versions of myself, each softer, more delicate, more reshaped. The saleswoman approached, voice low, hypnotic, eyes tracing my form as if inspecting a creation. "You've come far," she said, and I shivered, knowing it was the shoes guiding me there. My hands moved to a dress displayed under a soft spotlight, brushing the fabric, feeling it conform to my body, to the shape the shoes demanded. I slipped into it. The reflection in the mirrors confirmed it. My transformation was nearly complete. My body, my gestures, my posture, my expression, they were no longer mine. I had become exactly what the shoes had intended. I left that boutique in the dead of night, purchases in hand, trembling. Each reflection in the darkened windows confirmed the truth. My chest was softer, my hips curved, my gait fluid, shoulders narrowed. My voice had softened. My gestures were delicate, instinctive. The shoes hummed their approval, invisible yet omnipresent. I realized finally that the man I had been was gone. There was no resistance left, no autonomy. Only obedience, submission, transformation. And yet, a small part of me, buried deep, welcomed it, craving the next pull, the next boutique, the next step into the endless ritual. I do not attempt to resist anymore. Each morning, the shoes wait. Each step, each boutique, each reflection confirms what I have become. My life is no longer mine. It belongs entirely to them. I walk, I shop, I change, endlessly, relentlessly. The whispers are constant, guiding, shaping, reminding me that I am theirs, completely, irreversibly. The man I was has vanished. I am a vessel of satin, silk, lace, and whispers, and the shoes are patient, eternal, and inevitable. I will never stop. I will never be free. And in that realization, I feel a dark, irrevocable thrill, for the shoes have taken everything and yet, in some terrible way, they have made me whole. The days and nights blurred into a rhythm I could no longer define. Each morning, I awoke to the subtle gleam of the shoes beside my bed, ribbons untangled, satin soft, calling me with an insistence that could not be ignored. I no longer questioned, I no longer hesitated. My feet slipped inside automatically, warmth and pressure spreading up my legs, an electric tension that surged through me. The whispering began immediately, soft, coaxing, commanding. Walk. Shop. Transform. Obey. I obeyed, my legs carrying me down streets I barely recognized, to boutiques that seemed to appear just for me. Inside the boutiques, the air was intoxicating, scented with perfumes, polished wood, and the faint hum of subtle power. Mirrors multiplied endlessly, reflecting not just my body, but the incremental transformations imposed by the shoes. My shoulders narrowed further, my hips curved, my chest softened, my posture delicate, fluid. I no longer looked like the man I had been. The reflection staring back at me was someone entirely new, shaped piece by the compulsion, by the whispers, by the invisible hands of satin. Each glance, each movement, each touch of fabric deepened my surrender. I hated it, yet a small, guilty thrill coiled through me like fire. I noticed the reactions of others with increasing clarity. Saleswomen smiled knowingly, their gazes lingering on my altered form as if they could see both the man I had been and the vessel I was becoming. Strangers glanced curiously, some with subtle approval. My hands moved almost of their own accord, lifting garments I would never have chosen, tracing textures over skin I barely recognized as mine. I purchased them all, trembling, heart racing, whispering apologies to myself I did not believe. Dreams invaded my waking hours. In them, the shoes walked themselves, carrying me through impossible boutiques, lined with mirrors that reflected endless versions of myself, each softer, more delicate, more transformed. I tried to remove them in these dreams, to reclaim some control, but they anticipated every hesitation, slipped over my feet, tied themselves with invisible hands, guiding me forward into garments, mirrors, rituals I could no longer resist. I woke drenched in sweat, body trembling, mind fractured, yet a part of me ached to obey, to repeat the compulsion, to submit further. Boutiques became stages for my transformation. I no longer entered to shop. I entered to perform, to witness the reshaping of my body, my posture, my gestures, my mind. Each visit was a ritual. The shoes guided my hands, my gaze, my expression. Mirrors confirmed what I could not deny. I was no longer fully myself. I was a puppet of satin and whispers, reshaped in ways both terrifying and intoxicating. Fear and fascination became inseparable, a constant pulse in my chest, a dark rhythm that I followed without question. One night, I followed the shoes to a boutique tucked into a narrow alley, illuminated by golden light that seemed almost unreal. Mirrors lined the walls, multiplying my reflection infinitely. The saleswoman appeared, voice soft, melodic, hypnotic. "We've been expecting you," she said. The shoes urged me forward, and I obeyed. They guided me to a single dress, delicate, flowing, the color of twilight. My hands trembled as I touched it, feeling the fabric conform to my body, to the shape the shoes demanded. I slipped into it, and in the mirrors, my transformation was undeniable. My frame was slender, my shoulders narrow, my hips curved, my chest softened, my gait fluid and feminine. I recoiled in panic, yet the pull of the shoes, the whispers, the ritual was irresistible. I was theirs completely. I left the boutique that night, purchases in hand, body and mind reshaped, reflection confirming what I had become. The streets felt alien, yet familiar, each window, each mirror showing me a version of myself I no longer recognized but could not resist. The shoes hummed softly, a presence I felt in every step. I was their creation, their vessel, their obedient follower. There was no man left, only the construct the shoes had molded, a form perfected through weeks, months of compulsion and ritual. And yet, deep within, a spark of forbidden thrill coiled in my chest. I cannot stop. I will not try. Each morning, the shoes wait, gleaming, calling. Each step, each boutique, each mirror confirms my surrender. My life is no longer mine. It belongs to satin, to whispers, to the invisible rhythm that guides me. I walk, I shop, I transform endlessly. The pull is absolute, the control complete. The man I had been is gone. The shoes are patient, relentless, eternal. I am theirs entirely, and in that dark, irrevocable surrender, I feel a thrill, a perverse satisfaction, a sense of completeness. I have become the shape they demanded. I am lost, and yet, in some terrible, beautiful way, I am whole. Weeks bled into months, and the shoes' pull grew stronger, more insistent, more precise. I no longer walked. I glided, each step a ritual perfected over countless forced journeys into boutiques that now felt like extensions of my own home. Mirrors no longer frightened me, they celebrated me. I traced my fingers over fabrics the shoes guided me toward, silks, chiffons, laces, each garment reshaping me further, each reflection confirming the transformation I could no longer deny. My posture was delicate, My gait fluid, my voice soft and melodic, every movement dictated by whispers I could not resist. The boutiques had become sanctuaries of compulsion. I no longer entered to shop. I entered to obey, to submit, to perform the transformation as the shoes demanded. Saleswomen no longer merely watched, they guided subtly, nudging me to specific items, arranging displays to highlight my altered form. Each touch of fabric, each glance in the mirror, was a ritual. My body changed in ways I could feel but not fully control. Hips curved, chest softened, shoulders narrowed, hands delicate and precise. My reflection was no longer a man, but something entirely new, shaped by satin, lace, and whispers. Dreams began to merge with waking life. In them, the shoes walked themselves, leading me through endless boutiques, halls of mirrors reflecting infinite versions of myself, each more delicate, more feminine, more transformed. I would try to remove them, to run, to reclaim myself, but the shoes anticipated every hesitation, guiding me forward, tying themselves to my body, whispering in my mind, coaxing me deeper. I woke trembling, drenched, my reflection confirming yet another subtle shift. Fear and fascination were inseparable, terror and pleasure coiled together like serpents in my chest. One night, the shoes led me to a boutique that shimmered impossibly, almost otherworldly. Mirrors lined every wall, reflecting infinite versions of myself, each iteration softer, more feminine, more obedient. The saleswoman appeared, voice low, hypnotic. "You've come far," she said, and I shivered. The shoes compelled me forward, hands moving of their own accord toward a single dress, delicate, flowing, the color of twilight. I slipped into it. The mirrors confirmed it. My body had been reshaped, entirely slender frame, narrow shoulders, curved hips, softened chest, fluid gait. I was no longer the man I had been. I was a creation of the shoe's will. I left the boutique in the dead of night, heart pounding, purchases in hand, reflection confirming the truth. The man I had been was gone. Each window, each mirror, each glance reflected only the version the shoes demanded. I had no choice, no autonomy. The whispers hummed constantly in my mind, guiding me, shaping me, claiming me. I was theirs, completely, irrevocably, every movement, every gesture, every thought theirs to direct. The streets, the boutiques, the mirrors, they were all extensions of the shoes. I could feel them anticipating my every hesitation, nudging me forward, ensuring compliance. My life had shrunk to a single, continuous ritual. Walk, shop, transform, reflect, obey. I no longer slept without them, no longer thought without them, no longer existed without their guidance. Every fiber of my being had been rewritten. I had become a vessel of satin, silk, lace, and whispers, a creature of their design. And yet, within this absolute surrender, a dark thrill persisted. I had lost myself entirely, but in that loss, there was a perverse completeness. Each compelled step, each boutique, each reflection affirmed the transformation, confirmed the dominance of the shoes, and deepened the intoxicating, terrifying satisfaction of obedience. I would never resist. I could never escape. I was theirs, and in that knowledge, I found a terrible, exquisite fulfillment. The shoes wait every morning, patient, gleaming. Each day, each step, each boutique confirms what I have become. There is no man left. There is only the shape they demand, the rituals they dictate, the obedience I cannot deny. I walk endlessly, endlessly compelled, endlessly transformed. I am lost, and yet, in this eternal surrender, I am whole. The shoes have claimed me entirely, and I will never be free.